Everyone's getting killed. Oh, no!
Shall all die. The House of the Dead.
Thank you.
How's it going, everyone? Well, with Halloween only hours away, I decided to celebrate and review one of the greatest horror light gun shooters of all time, The House of the Dead. The House of the Dead is an on-rail shooter that has you blasting zombies and other evil creatures. The House of the Dead was released to Japanese arcades on September 21st, 1996, and will be released internationally on March 4th, 1997. The House of the Dead became an insane hit, and rightfully so, because it's one awesome horror light gun shooter. And I remember like 5 years ago, or maybe even longer, I got to try the original House of the Dead arcade many times, and I loved it, especially playing with a friend. The game features a really creative gameplay mechanic, where depending on how well you do, you could end up taking entirely different routes, and this is decided on whether or not you save someone or not, along with shooting open hatches and panels, and it really helps to add to the replayability, though to be honest, with House of the Dead, I doubt you would ever need a reason to come back to this awesome game, but I will warn you, House of the Dead is a brutally hard game, and truthfully, I haven't been able to beat it. I can beat all the sequels, but I'm still struggling with the original. But the gameplay is awesome, along with the awesome music that you will want to keep coming back for more. A port for the Sega Saturn was a no-brainer, but it was interestingly not ported by the game's creators, AM1, instead outsourced to a company called Tentalis, who were given the job of porting House of the Dead to the Saturn. Frankly, even though the Saturn games they had done ports of in the past were okay, but frankly I feel AM1 should have been given the job to port the game, because I'm sure they could have done a really good job. But let me clarify, I'm not blaming Tentalis for delivering a less than stellar port, which I'll talk about in a minute, because it seems this port was heavily rushed, and I suspect this was Sega's fault, and instead of delivering a solid port, we got a lukewarm one at best. The Saturn port of House of the Dead features some severely downgraded graphics, and there's tons of pixelation, and while I don't think the zombies' character models look too bad, but they're clearly made of low-count polygons, and the frame rate is nowhere near a smooth 60 frames per second, and seems to fluctuate anywhere between 15 to 25 frames per second. And while I still think the light gun works good enough, but the game does seem to struggle when using it, because the frame rate will bounce around a lot. But if you use the controller that has pretty good controls, the frame rate seems to be more stable and closer to 30 frames per second. The Saturn version has extra modes, including Saturn mode, which will let you choose from several characters, some with more powerful weapons, others with more bullets in the chamber, and there's even a boss mode where you can take on all the game's bosses back to back. Now I will say this, despite the heavily downgraded visuals and low frame rates, the gameplay still holds up, and it's a blast to play, especially with a friend. And unfortunately, House of the Dead is really hard to find, because it was released in North America on March 31st, 1998, and sometime that year in Europe. And I'm sure you guys have noticed by now that the game features 4 different types of blood: green, blue, red, and purple. And the reason for that is the North American and European versions which is what I have a secret code you can enter, which I'm showing you right now, which will not only give you access to infinite lives, but it will give you the option to choose between the 4 different colors of blood. And unfortunately, the Japanese version of House of the Dead, which is very affordable, does not seem to have the option to change the blood's color, especially to the original red, which was changed to green in North America and Europe as a form of censorship. So this feature unfortunately adds extra value and demand to the North American and European versions. And other than a PC port, which I don't currently own, which I almost forgot to mention, was also released in 1998 but was ported by Sega themselves, which frankly looks far better and runs at 60 frames per second. And it's still not arcade perfect, but it's a far better port and it seems pretty easy to find. So that might be an alternative for you guys who want to experience this game. The only other option is you could try and get the House of the Dead arcade cabinet, or at least the arcade board, which I'm looking for myself, because it would obviously give you the best experience, but unfortunately those boards do not show up very often, and are hard to find. The House of the Dead has never been ported to a newer console, and there are rumors going around that apparently the source code might have been lost, and if that's true, then Sega would have to remake the game from scratch to do an upgraded HD version. But there is a possibility that the source code could be extracted from the arcade board, but don't quote me on it. In the end, the House of the Dead is an excellent game and I really like it, and I highly recommend you guys check this game out. I give the Saturn version of House of the Dead an 8 out of 10.
It's a dead end.
Thank you.
No! No! No!